Hi everyone, it's Jerry. Let's have a look at a game from the ongoing 2019 Altibox Norway Chess tournament. On the white end, Ding Liren, his opponent Wesley So. The format for this tournament is atypical and important to note. In each of the rounds, competitors play one classical time control game, and should the result be decisive, the winner earns 2 points towards the tournament standings, the loser 0, and the round is over. If on the other hand, the result of the classical game is a draw, each player earns a half point towards the tournament standings, and must play an additional game before the round ends. So, that game is an Armageddon game. That's what I'm about to share with you in this video, the Armageddon game from round 1 between Ding Liren and Wesley So. So how do things work? Well, white has 7 minutes, black has 10. There's an increment of 3 seconds implemented starting at move 61. Black has draw odds, and the winner of this game earns an additional full point towards the tournament standings. One other note, players maintain the same colors as they had in the classical game. So for the mathies out there, if you're keeping track, at the end of each round, you walk away with 0, half, 1.5, or 2 points. Okay, this begins as an English opening, but quickly transposes into a Queen's Gambit declined exchange variation, black opting to recapture on d5 with the knight, welcoming a minor piece exchange, in the process building white's center, white now with a majority. It's struck at thematic, and move 7 we have rook b1, a move that says I'm not welcome to any more minor piece exchanges, at least for now. Most popular on this move 7 is knight f3, which would be welcome to an additional minor piece exchange that we could see in the following way. Bishop b4, and there you go. These two will be watching from the sidelines. So it's first rook b1 interfering with bishop b4 and exerting pressure against the queenside. Only after bishop e7 do we have knight f3. Castles, bishop c4, some prep work by black for b5, prevented. Queen c7. Without question, this is a familiar position to Ding Liren. One game, he had this position as white against Vladimir Kramnik at the 33rd European Club Cup Open 2017, where he followed with bishop to d3, and Kramnik eventually put the knight on b4 with tempo. So likely with this idea in mind, white plays bishop e2 in this game. Seems a bit more cautious, going to e2. Why wouldn't you want to go on this, keep it on this diagonal, and one day stare at h7, more aggressive, right? Well, we're seeing a reason not to maybe go to d3. Okay, b6, castles, takes, black is fianchettoing, throwing a punch. Only now does the bishop go to d3. And after knight c6, what does white have up his sleeve? How is he going to address the knight b4 move? Without question, this is a key square in this position. It is a hole in white's camp, and it's could always have additional support. a5, knight b4 already has enough support. If black wants to put a piece there, he's going to put a piece there. White has to find a way to work around a knight on b4. So an instructive moment, for me at least, is this move 15, these next few moves. How to reorganize the pieces on the queenside. We have rook b3, vacating b1 for the bishop. Now this isn't some, rook lift, some coin flip of a rook lift. You can be sure Ding Liren is not taking out his favorite coin and saying heads rook b2, tails rook b3. No, rook b3 also stays out of the bishop's way. Bishop b2 would be a good follow-up should black apply more pressure to d4. Additionally, rook b3, this can really turn into a star piece one day. Bishop backs up, knight moves forward, and there you go, rook opposite the king. So there is some nice lateral potential for the white rook on the third rank. Black gives the rook a kick, back, rook b2. Black returns, and now we have rook d2. It may seem tempting to go here. Open file, the knight's in the pin, but black gets out of the pin and says now this would hit that much harder. So it's rook d2, and when I see this position, I think to myself, boy, there's a lot of energy being built up in the white position. White is really gearing up for a d5 break. The mobility of the white pieces will spring to life. D5 is nearing. There's a thematic pawn break in the center, an important sequence to be familiar with within this structure. First, the black rooks are involved. White is fianchettoing. D5. Here's this pawn break I'm referring to. D5. After knight b4 and bishop b1, of course. Takes. And, of course, we recapture, right? No. We bypass that pawn. Now, this is a pawn sacrifice. What is happening with it? Play d5, and after it takes, you just sneak right by. Well, there are many things to note. For one, when black played rook d8, the rook was on a half-open file. It was staring at white pieces. When the bishop played to b7, what was it doing? It was staring at a white pawn, at one point threatening a white pawn. This is no longer the case. The black pawn, we can say, interferes with the black piece's mobility. Additionally, white has now a kingside majority. The e-pawn in particular, this guy here, can be a real bother to the black king. Pry away at least one of the pawns, right? Knight has the d4 square. This can be a huge post for a knight. All right. Oh, another thing I'm just realizing now, f5. That pawn isn't there controlling f5, and this induces some weakness, or at least compels Wesley to play a move like g6. Certainly a committal move, creating holes, opening up this bishop's eyes. That much more to the g7, h8 square, but what is its point? Well, it watches over this killer knight move to f5. Could become a real beast. And these two bishops, by the way, are real killers in this game. They don't even move anymore in this game, but their presence, you can be sure, is felt. Bishops functioning on these, bishops functioning on adjacent diagonals, monsters. Okay, rook e1, d4, black says, get out of my way, pawn. I want my bishop to c, my knight to have a new square, my rook to c. White gets the pawn up to e6, breaking down the black king structure further. The computer at this stage says, take that pawn and try to play on this following position where you give up the bishop for knight. Bishop c5, it holds as around equal, but white is still shooting for something, even though white is down a pawn, looking to break at the king further. Much cozier white king position, to be sure. Black does not take, but instead tries to work around the pawn on e6, playing f6. Knight takes d4. Knight c6. White to move. What would you do in this position? Feel free to pause the video. You ready? Okay, here we go. Knight f5 anyway. You played g6 just a couple moves ago. Try to keep that knight out there, and he still goes there. That's got to be a bit painful, right? What's the story here? Now, in the game, we have rook takes rook, and then white inserts this in-betweener. Chops the bishop with check, and only then recaptures. Acquires an unopposed dark square bishop. But before we have a look at what happened in the game, certainly Ding Liren had to calculate at least a couple of these lines. What would happen if the knight is picked off? We would have queen h5 with an eye on queen f7. What would black do here? If rook takes rook, being extra greedy, right? Takes the knight, takes a rook. Well, this is a mate in 5. Queen f7, and now bishop takes f5. What's the defense to queen takes h7? No good defense. Computer says grab a pawn with check. Looking at the other ways to maybe defend, if this, to allow the queen defending, nope, that's not working. That's mate. And suppose the bishop goes here saying, okay, I'll defend this and still this. No, that's not working either. The rook can't see f8. Queen f8 mate. So what else? Suppose black isn't greedy and says, I'll just stop your queen from going to f7. Well, there can follow bishop takes f5, and there still isn't going to be a good defense against h7. A bishop move to, I don't know, here. Rook d7. Hitting the queen, renewing this threat. And one last variation, the coolest one I ended up coming across when preparing for this video is after queen h5, suppose the bishop plays here immediately. A skewer, some defense of f7. Well, we can see this bishop go to a2. It's a quiet move, but such a deadly move. Setting up e7 discovered check. Queen here to stop this pawn from advancing would be met with this absolute killer of a move, rook to d7. I love this move. Rook d7, chop, chop, discovered check, king's hit, queen's hit, rook's hit. Black is crying uncle. Okay. It's bad news if you take the knight, to be sure. In this game, it's rook takes rook, knight takes bishop with check, and only then picks up the rook. So what do we do here as white? Well, identify that you have an unopposed dark square bishop, put pressure on the dark squares in your opponent's camp. This is now a focal point, f6. Some defense is necessary, h4. Prying at the light squares, trying to break down the light squares. And if need be, nice to have a flight square. Bishop c8, h5. Looking at a couple different moves here, if black is capturing or pushing, that can be met strongly with queen e4, hitting the knight and threatening mate in 1. If bishop takes pawn in this position, that can be met with chop chop, queen g3. And what's the defense against queen takes g6? No good defense. Queen here, that would now be an overloaded piece. 2 jobs too many. That can be met with takes and a mate in 2. So what does black play here? Doesn't push, capture, tries to clog up this main diagonal, tries to interfere with this unopposed dark square bishop. White has none of it. The knight is knocked right out with the rook. Maintaining these 2 bishops, they stay there for the rest of the game. They've been there for a while. The king is pulled closer to the white side, king h6, running for his life. Takes, queen h2, come closer, king g5 and queen g3, move 35, is in fact the final move of this game. It is at this point Wesley So resigns. And that moment, in fact, captured very nicely by the official photographer of this event, Lennart Otis. This picture comes courtesy of him. Resignation time for Team Black. If this game continued, king h5, this is a checkmate in 5 position. Or excuse me, after this move it's a checkmate in 4 with check, and the closer the king comes to your side of the board, the less material you need to do stuff like this. This would be one fancy way this game could end. Straight to checkmate, bishop mate. But this is as far as it went. Queen G3, and black resigned. So if we have a look at tail the tape on this one, here we go. Just zipping through. It is, again, a blitz game or Armageddon game. It's the quality of play. Average centi-pawn loss, basically the lower the number, the better. 2 inaccuracies, 0 mistakes, 0 blunders for Ding Liren, and 4-4-1 for Wesley. So 19 and 48 on the average centi-pawn loss. Anyhow, as usual, feel free to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.